Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to all the panel that watching my presentation today. Today I'm Muhammad Daniel Haika Beroslan who presented to you guys about my research project which the title is Investigating Self-Efficacy and the Stress Levels of UiTM Seremban Sports Science Student, and my code number is M51. So we go to the second slide where about my background of my study. So according to Bandura 1997 said that people believe about their capabilities to produce designated levels of performance that exercise influence over events that affect their life. While according to Covington 1997 said that when stress is perceived negatively or become excessive, it can affect both health and academic performance and might have had an adverse effect on their student. So we go to the statement of my problem for my study. So there are two types of statement problem in my study, where the first one is according to Heslin 2006 said that students with high self-efficacy are able to pay serious attention, organize and elaborate material effectively through their cognitive aspect. While according to Saha 2017 said that according to the statistic published by National Crime Record Bureau, there is one student every hour that commits suicide that are from this stress problem. So we go to the research objective of my study. So I have identified two types of objectives that I made for this study, which the first one is to identify the effect of self-efficacy towards the stress level of UiTM Seremban sports science student. And the second one is to determine the relationship between self-efficacy and stress level among UiTM Seremban sports science students. So you can see that these are my significance of my study, which the first one is to encourage and improve theoretical understanding and acknowledgement of the complexity affiliated with student stress and the self-efficacy. And the second one is as initial study in the scholar stress and may become a cornerstone for future studies on similar thema like the coping scheme and stress for the identical community or different community. So we go to the next slide, which about my literature review. So for introduction of my literature review, you can see that according to Hackett 1983 said that the stress and anxiety may depress self-efficacy judgment of students because the cognitive theory gave a strong negative relationship between self-efficacy and perceived stress, and empirical findings offer support for the theory. While according to Lazarus, 1984 said that the cognitive model of stress, personal beliefs such as self-efficacy are very crucial in evaluating demands from the environment. So these are the relationship between the self-efficacy and the stress level in my literature review. So you can see that the first one is the self-efficacy judgment are both task and situation specific, and students use their judgment about their abilities in regard to a particular task or goal, which means that the student that have a high self-efficacy will be more successful in the studies compared to the student that have a lower in self-efficacy, according to the Pinterest 2004. But according to Jenkins, 2000 said that the stress is often considered to be the effect of the response to a stimulus, which the individual affective factors such as stress has been cited mutually of the four most important variables, and this idea has gradually become common in the discourse about life and health. So we go to the next slide, which is about my methodology for this study. So the research design that I use for this study is the descriptive study and quantitative research design and questionnaire distribution. So in this descriptive study, I use about uh, uh, quantitative quantitative rather than qualitative because my population are from the UiTM Seremban. So I just take only a few of them rather than a total of full of the population. So after I have made the questionnaire, I will distribute my questionnaire to the respondent that I have chosen. So you can see here my type of sampling that I use in this study, which you can see here is a table from the Krigi and Morgan, 1970, and you can see that N is a population size and S is a sample size. So you can see here that my total population for this study is 900, but I just only take 269. And you can see that the total of number FSR student in UiTM Negeri Sembilan Campus Seremban 3 is 900 people according to the HEA Register April 2020. So the estimate sample need to be taken from the total number of population that is 269. But 20 sample need to be added to avoid from unwritten rate or drop out, and the total sample that I use for this research is 323 respondent of sports science students. So you can see here some instrumentation that I use for this study, where I will use reliability test and the normality test. So this method that I use is to check the validity of my questionnaire, and the needed for this test is the data that can make it to know that the questionnaire is normal or not normal distribute. That you can see that the normal value for the Cronbach alpha need to be equal or higher than the p-value 0.05. So we go next for the instrumentation. So a structured questionnaire was developed to collect data from the student to know their self-efficacy and the stress level. And a total of 18 items were featured in the questionnaire using a 5-point Likert scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Then my questionnaire will be answered by the respondent that I have been choose, and the finding data that I will get, I will make some analysis to know what are the effects for both of my variables. So you can see here is my data collection procedure. For the first one, we need to get the ethical approval from the UiTM. And after that, we need to ask the permission to the respondent if the respondent can answer all the questionnaire that been given by me through the Google form. And after that, before the respondent answer all the questionnaire that have been distributed, I will give some briefing to the respondent about the questionnaire that I've been give to them. And later I will distribute the questionnaire to them through the Google form. And after all my respondents have finished answer my questionnaire, I will collect the questionnaire for me to do the next step which is data analysis. So we can see here for my next slide is about data analysis. So for this slide, you can see which are the research objective which divided into two, which the research objective and the data analysis for objective 1 is to identify the effect of self-efficacy towards the stress level of UiTM Seremban 3 sports science student. And for this objective, the method that will use by me is descriptive statistics. And for the second objective that I will use data analysis the objective is to determine the relationship between self-efficacy and stress level among UiTM Seremban 3 sports science student. And for this objective, I will use either Pearson or Spearman correlation analysis. So you can see here that these are my pilot study before I continue go through to other data analysis. Before I will go through to data analysis further, I need to do a pilot study to know that my questionnaire that being distributed to the respondent is normal distribute or not normal distribute. So we can see here there are two types of pilot study that have been done by me, which the first one I do a reliability test analysis, and the second one is normality test analysis. So you can see in the table of reliability test analysis, we can see by previous study in self-efficacy and the stress level is looking 0.1 ranking and 0.75. And the actual study that be done by me is looking on 0.941 and 0.936. So it can concluded here that my data is normal. But before I will know my data is normal or not, so I will do the normality test analysis by looking of the Shapiro-Wilk significant p-value. So in this case, there are two types of variable, which are the first one is the self-efficacy and the stress level. But after I do a test of normality, I look that my significance is 0.00. So it make my data is not normal distribute. So I concluded that I need to use a non-parametric test to do the data analysis for both independent and dependent variable of my variable. So next you can see is about my descriptive on my demographic respondent. So the first one is gender. You can see here male is more involved in the study compared to the female, while in age the 21 to 20 years old of the respondent is more than the other two. So we go to the next slide is about race. We can see here the Malay respondent for my study is more involved in this questionnaire compared to the other respondent. While in terms of program, the sport management students are more involved in my study compared to the sport science. Next, I will tell you guys about my demographic on semester and a level application. In this case, we can see that the semester 6 students are more involved than other semester in the UiTM Seremban 3 sports science student. While in the level application, you can see that the degree sports students are more likely to involve in my questionnaire compared to the diploma student. And lastly is about my demographic on the household income and parent employment status of my respondent. In the household income, you can see that most of my respondents have a total value of the parent that have a salary less than 1,000 and compared to the other. And for the parent employment status, you can see that most of my respondents have a parent that have a full-time employment compared to the other employment status. So we go through to my discrete statistic for my objective one. We can see here there are two picture and table that I have made in the report, which the first one is the self-efficacy and the stress level. In terms of self-efficacy, we can see that the highest mean or standard deviation in terms of the question in the self-efficacy is question number 6, which the mean question number 5, which the mean of 3.53 compared to the other question. While in terms of stress level, we can see that the highest mean in the question in the variable of stress level from the question number 5, which the question is I've been upset because of something that happened unexpectedly on myself with the total mean value of 3.25 and SD standard deviation of 0.9107. So these are my hypothesis testing for my last objective, which the relationship between self-efficacy and the stress level among the UiTM Seremban 3 sports science student. So to make my data, to make me know what are the significance of this self-efficacy and stress level, so I have used the Spearman correlation analysis, and you can look at this slide which I have give you some table of my final analysis. We can see that there were positive correlate between the self-efficacy and the stress level, which the R is 0.46 and the total of respondents 323, and the p-value is lower than 0.01. And since the result of Spearman correlation coefficient falls in the range of 0.4 to 0.7, it can be concluded that there is a moderate positive correlation between the two subjects, and there was a significant relationship between the self-efficacy and the stress level as the p-value is less than 0.04. So I have get the data, and hence my hypothesis is being rejected. Therefore, I can conclude that my self-efficacy, if the self-efficacy increase, the stress level of the sports science student also will be increased. So we go to the next slide, which my last slide, which my second last slide for today, which the first is about my discussion. So here we can see there are two types of my objective. Which the first objective is to identify effect of self-efficacy towards the stress level of UiTM Seremban 3 sports science student, and my second objective is to determine the relationship between the self-efficacy and the stress level among UiTM Seremban 3 sports science student. So in this case, the discussion that I have made for my first objective is the result indicated that the self-efficacy is highest than the stress level of the sports science student in the value of mean. So this can be concluded that the higher of the self-efficacy can also increase the stress level of the sports science student. While for my second objective, that I been conclude that this study shows both of my independent and dependent variable that the measure is by me is being correlated with each other, and it can be conclude that the higher of self-efficacy will also affect the increasing of the stress level of sports science student in UiTM Seremban 3. So these are my slides. You can see all these are my references for me to do this thesis. So that's all from me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.